The Moonspire throne hall breathed with quiet power. Silver-veined marble stretched beneath vaulted ceilings carved with the history of Lycan rule. Battles etched into stone, Alpha lineages immortalized in relief. Moonlight filtered through towering arched windows, catching on ceremonial armor and polished blades, turning the space cold and luminous. Hierarchy lived here, and it watched everything. Lyria stood near the outer ring of the hall, neither hidden nor invited forward. She felt the unspoken designation keenly present, but peripheral. Exactly where Moonspire preferred her. Around her, Lycans moved with practiced restraint. Warriors lined the walls, posture rigid, eyes forward. Omegas stood in careful clusters along the perimeter, heads lowered, bodies angled inward, as though trying to occupy less space than they were given. No one spoke to her. Nyx stirred beneath her skin. "Watch." Her Lycan murmured. Not a warning. An instruction. They are aligning themselves. At the dais, Alpha Daesung stood immovable, broad shoulders squared beneath ceremonial armor etched with lunar sigils. His hands rested calmly atop the pommel of his blade, a picture of absolute authority. To his right, Elder Maeve waited in stillness, white locks draped over her shoulders, lavender eyes unreadable. And to his left, Jae-min. He stood like a statue carved from restraint. Eyes fixed ahead, expression locked into cool indifference. If tension ran through him, it was buried beneath layers of discipline no one else could penetrate. Lyria felt it before she saw her. The scent came first, cold florals and something sharper beneath. Controlled. Intentional. Mina stepped into the center of the hall. She wore pale lunar silk tailored perfectly to her frame, silver thread woven through her waist-length black hair. Every step she took was measured, precise, as though the floor itself existed to support her claim. She did not look at Lyria. She didn't have to. Mina stopped 3 paces from the dais and inclined her head to Alpha Daesung. Not deeply, not submissively. Just enough to acknowledge his authority without diminishing her own standing. "My Alpha," she said smoothly. Daesung inclined his head in return. Approval flickered briefly in his eyes. "I speak for the stability of Moonspire," Mina continued, her voice carrying effortlessly through the hall. "In light of the recent rogue movements, and the unrest caused by unfamiliar elements." Her gaze slid, brief, deliberate, toward Lyria. The shift was immediate. An elder near the front clasped his hands tighter, lips pressing into a thin line of agreement. A younger warrior shifted his weight, discomfort flickering across his face before discipline masked it. Along the wall, an Omega lowered her head a fraction too fast, as if the words themselves carried weight. Lyria did not move. She refused to give Mina the satisfaction of reaction. Jae-min's jaw tightened almost unnoticeably. Mina turned then, finally facing him. Her expression softened into something practiced. Intimate, proprietary, polished by years of expectation. "As future Luna," she said, "it is my responsibility to stand beside our Alpha Prince. To strengthen him. To anchor him." She stepped closer. Too close. Lyria felt it like pressure against her ribs, an invisible force tightening the air. Before she could examine the sensation, Nyx surged sharply beneath her skin. Not a growl. Not anger. A sudden, instinctive flare. Defensive, alert, bristling. Lyria's breath caught. She didn't know why. Mina continued, unaware, or uncaring. "Prince Jae-min is." Nyx recoiled hard, a flash of heat and tension that made Lyria's fingers curl involuntarily at her side. The word never finished landing cleanly. "Mine." The declaration settled into the hall like law. Not shouted. Not challenged. Accepted. Elders nodded with quiet satisfaction. A few warriors exchanged glances that said of course. Omegas lowered their eyes further, the matter already decided in their minds. Lyria felt the pressure intensify, less from Mina herself than from the weight of collective agreement. "She claims what is not hers," Nyx whispered, low and sharp. "And the hall bends to it." Lyria swallowed, unsettled, not by Mina's audacity, but by the strange, unresolved tension still coiled inside her chest. Jae-min did not move. Did not speak. Silence stretched, tight and dangerous. Mina waited, patient and composed. She had been groomed for this moment her entire life. The hall belonged to her expectation. Alpha Daesung's gaze never left his son. "Well?" the Alpha asked at last. Jae-min's eyes flickered, not to Mina. To Lyria. Just for a heartbeat. Rakan surged beneath his skin at the sight of her. An abrupt, uninvited reaction that set his nerves on edge. The Lycan bristled at the word mine, at the claim spoken aloud, at the subtle tension rippling through the space between them. Jae-min shoved the instinct down hard. He looked back to his father. "This is not the time," he said coolly. Not a rejection. Not an acceptance. A pause. Mina felt it anyway, the fracture in expectation, the hesitation where certainty should have lived. Her smile never faltered, but something sharp flashed behind her icy blue eyes. "As you wish," she said lightly. "The claim stands." She stepped back, reclaiming her place among the elite with flawless composure. The court exhaled as one. Murmurs followed. Soft, satisfied, already reshaping the moment into rumor and certainty. Lyria let out a slow breath she hadn't realized she was holding. This was not resolution. This was positioning. Nyx's presence pressed steady and watchful beneath her skin. "She has moved first," her Lycan murmured. "Now she will expect no resistance." Across the hall, Jae-min remained rigid, caught between duty, tradition, and an awareness he refused to name. Rakan paced restlessly beneath his restraint, unsettled by the silence, by the way his gaze kept drifting, against his will, toward the woman who had not bowed, had not flinched, had not disappeared. The claim had been spoken. But nothing had settled. The council chamber was smaller than the throne hall, but far more dangerous. Where the hall was designed for spectacle, this room existed for decisions that ruined lives quietly. Moonstone walls curved inward, etched with ancient Lycan laws and blood oaths carved so deeply they cast shadows of their own. A circular table dominated the center, its surface inlaid with a map of Moonspire and the surrounding territories. Flickering blue flame burned in low braziers, casting cold light across the space. Alpha Daesung stood at the head of the table. He did not sit. He never did when he intended to dominate the conversation. Jae-min entered without announcement, boots silent against the stone floor. He stopped 2 paces inside the threshold, posture rigid, hands clasped behind his back. Formal, restrained, distant. Rowan waited near the wall, arms crossed, expression neutral but alert. Elder Maeve stood opposite him, staff resting lightly against the floor, her gaze unreadable. The doors sealed shut behind Jae-min with a heavy, final sound. Daesung did not turn around. "You embarrassed her," the Alpha said calmly. Jae-min's jaw tightened. "I did nothing." That, Daesung replied, finally turning, was precisely the problem. He moved closer to the table, one large hand braced against its edge. The map beneath his palm glowed faintly, moonlines tracing the borders of Lycan influence. "Mina has been groomed for decades," Daesung continued. "Her family controls trade routes, southern alliances, and 3 battalions of trained warriors. She is stability." Daesung straightened, his gaze sweeping the chamber like a general surveying a battlefield. "You think this is about affection," he continued. "It is not. It has never been." He gestured to the illuminated map embedded in the council table. Moonlit lines traced borders, trade routes, and contested territories, paths of power etched into stone. "Mina's family controls the southern trade corridors," Daesung said. "Silver shipments. Grain convoys. The river crossings that keep 3 allied packs fed through winter. Her name alone stabilizes negotiations that would otherwise end in blood." Jae-min's eyes flicked briefly to the map before returning to his father. "She represents continuity," Daesung went on. "Predictability. The kind of future elders can plan around. Warriors can die for. Alliances can trust." He stepped closer, voice lowering. "You do not marry women, Jae-min. You marry outcomes." Silence pressed in. "Mina is an outcome this kingdom understands," Daesung said. "She fits the structure. She reinforces it. She does not challenge the hierarchy that keeps Moonspire standing." His gaze hardened. The exile does. Jae-min's shoulders tightened. She has no alliances, Daesung continued. No political leverage. No lineage we can trace cleanly. She owes nothing to this court, and that makes her dangerous. He leaned forward slightly, emphasis deliberate. A Lycan who does not fear authority is a destabilizing force. Especially one who others may begin to admire. The implication was unmistakable. She is entitled, Jae-min said flatly. Daesung's eyes sharpened. She is necessary. Silence followed, thick, deliberate. Elder Maeve shifted slightly. You speak as though necessity excuses possession. Daesung ignored her. You will take a chosen mate, he said, voice steady. Not for affection. Not for desire. For the kingdom. Jae-min lifted his gaze. Storm-grey eyes met iron-dark ones without flinching. I will not be cornered into a bond one did not choose. Daesung's expression hardened. You will not gamble Moonspire's future on a stray Lycan who refuses to bow. The words landed like a blade. Rowan's arms tensed. Elder Maeve's eyes flickered. Not surprised, but displeased. Jae-min said nothing at first. When he spoke, his voice was colder than the stone around them. Lyria has done nothing to warrant suspicion. She exists, Daesung snapped. And that is enough. He straightened, towering. She arrived under rumor. She observes without permission. She stands when others kneel. And now, his lip curled slightly, she disrupts carefully laid political order. She refused to bow, Daesung continued. That is not ignorance. That is defiance. Nyx was not mentioned by name. But Daesung's gaze flicked briefly toward Elder Maeve, as if daring her to contradict him. Maeve did not. Not yet. You felt it, Daesung said, lowering his voice. Didn't you? Jae-min stilled. Rakan pressed sharply beneath his skin at the insinuation, unwelcome, agitated. I felt nothing, Jae-min said. Daesung studied him, slow and assessing. You hesitated. Jae-min felt the words strike deeper than Daesung intended. Hesitation implied uncertainty. Uncertainty implied weakness. He catalogued the moment clinically, as he had been trained to do. His glance across the hall, the brief flicker of awareness, the irritation that followed. None of it meant anything. It was distraction. Nothing more. And yet, the memory of Lyria standing unmoved, unbowed, replayed unbidden. The way the hall had seemed to tilt toward her defiance. The way the air had tightened when Mina spoke. Jae-min ground his teeth. This was not instinct. This was not significance. It was disruption. And disruption demanded correction. Rakan stirred restlessly beneath his skin, unsettled in a way Jae-min refused to examine. The Lycan bristled at the memory of Mina's claim, at the word mine, at the pressure it had placed on the space around them. Jae-min shoved the sensation down hard. He would not indulge it. Whatever reaction his body had betrayed in that hall was nothing more than irritation, at Mina's entitlement, at his father's expectations, at the exile's refusal to behave as predictably as everyone else. He lifted his gaze, storm-grey eyes cold and controlled. I did not hesitate, he said evenly. I assessed. And assessment, he reminded himself, was not weakness. Jae-min's fingers curled behind his back. You looked at her. The silence that followed was dangerous. Rowan took a subtle step forward. With respect, Alpha. Daesung raised a hand. Rowan stopped. This is not a conversation about feelings, Daesung said. It is about control. He leaned forward, palms braced against the table now. Lyria Monroe destabilizes this court by existing outside our hierarchy. She does not fear us. She does not seek approval. That makes her unpredictable. Jae-min's voice was quiet. Or honest. Daesung's eyes flashed. You will accept Mina's claim publicly, he said. You will reinforce it with action. Distance yourself from the exile. Reassert the order she threatens. And if I don't? Jae-min asked. Daesung smiled. It was not kind. Then I will ensure Miss Monroe understands exactly how unforgiving this kingdom can be. Rowan's breath hitched. Elder Maeve's staff struck the stone floor once. Sharp with warning. That path leads to ruin, she said softly. Daesung did not look at her. I am Alpha, he said. And I decide which ruins we walk through. Jae-min held his father's gaze, something dark and resolute settling behind his eyes. You will not touch her, he said. Daesung straightened slowly. I already have, he replied. The implication hung between them. Quiet, lethal, final. When Jae-min turned to leave, the weight of the chamber followed him. Behind him, Elder Maeve watched with sorrowed eyes. And far beneath the palace stone, something ancient stirred. Unaware of politics, unconcerned with tradition, and increasingly unwilling to remain silent. The inner ceremonial corridor was never loud. It didn't need to be. Sound died here by design, swallowed by thick moonstone walls etched with Lycan oaths and succession rites. Every footstep echoed just enough to remind those who passed through that this space was not meant for casual movement. It was a passage of acknowledgement, of rank, of obedience. Lyria felt it the moment she stepped inside. The air pressed heavier here, weighted with expectation. Even the light felt disciplined, filtered through narrow clerestory windows that cast pale bands across the floor like measured judgments. She slowed her pace instinctively. Not from fear, but awareness. Around her, Lycans moved with purpose. Warriors transitioned between duties, armor catching the light in brief flashes of silver. Elders spoke in low, controlled tones. Omegas passed along the edges, careful not to interrupt the flow of authority that governed the corridor. And then, the shift. It rippled outward before Mina even appeared. Voices softened. Movement stilled. Bodies angled inward, creating a subtle, unconscious path. Lyria felt Nyx tighten beneath her skin. Attention, her Lycan warned. Not yours, but dangerous all the same. Mina entered the corridor flanked by 2 attendants, her presence immaculate and deliberate. She wore a fitted gown of pale stone-blue silk, silver embroidery catching the light with every step. Her posture was perfect, shoulders back, chin lifted, stride unhurried. She did not rush. This space already belonged to her. The first Lycan she passed bowed immediately, deep and practiced. Another followed. Then another. The movement spread like a tide. Warriors dipped their heads. Elders inclined respectfully. Omegas lowered their gazes, pressing themselves closer to the walls. Hierarchy reasserted itself in silence. Lyria stopped walking. She stood just outside the flow of motion, her boots planted firmly against the stone floor. She did not boo her. Nyx's presence flared. Sharp. Alert but contained. Do not bend, her Lycan murmured. Not a command. A certainty. Mina noticed. She slowed her pace, steps measured, until she stood directly in front of Lyria. The corridor stilled completely. Every eye turned. Mina studied her for a long moment, head tilted slightly, icy blue eyes assessing. Not with curiosity, but expectation. The expectation that compliance would follow. That it always did. When it didn't, her lips curved into a thin, controlled smile. You forgot yourself, Mina said softly. The words were gentle. Polite. Sharp enough to cut. Lyria met her gaze evenly. No, she replied. I chose not to kneel. The silence that followed was absolute. An elder's breath caught. A warrior stiffened. Somewhere down the corridor, an Omega dropped her eyes so fast it bordered on panic. Mina's smile did not waver. How unfortunate, she said lightly. Custom exists for a reason. Lyria didn't raise her voice. So does choice. The air shifted. This wasn't ignorance. This wasn't confusion. This was defiance. Mina turned slightly, angling her body so others could hear without it appearing confrontational. She is untrained, Mina said, voice smooth as glass. Exile does that. It strips a Lycan of discipline. A few murmurs followed. Quiet, uneasy. Lyria felt the weight of them but refused to step back. I was trained, she said calmly. Just not to submit on command. The corridor seemed to contract. Mina's eyes flickered, just briefly. You stand in Moonspire, she said. You follow Moonspire's hierarchy. I respect strength, Lyria replied. Not titles. That did it. Gasps rippled outward this time, uncontrolled. A warrior near the wall shifted as though he might intervene. Then froze, unsure whether that was his place. Mina's smile sharpened. Careful, she warned softly. Disrespect is not tolerated here. Neither is false authority, Lyria said. Nyx surged, not violently, but with presence. An unmistakable there-ness that made the air hum faintly around Lyria's skin. Mina felt it. Her eyes narrowed, not in fear, but calculation. Before she could respond, a new presence entered the corridor. Jae-min. He emerged from the adjoining passageway, posture rigid, expression unreadable. His gaze swept the scene in an instant, the bowed Lycans, Mina standing poised and immaculate, Lyria standing alone and unyielding. Rakan stirred beneath his skin, restless. What is happening? Jae-min asked. The question was neutral. The tension was not. Mina turned to him immediately, her expression shifting, softening, claiming. She refuses protocol, Mina said. I was correcting her. Jae-min's gaze shifted to Lyria. She did not look away. I was walking, Lyria said. She stopped me. Mina's lips pressed together briefly. Jae-min exhaled slowly, controlled. He felt the pull of expectation settle over him. The unspoken demand to reassert order, to correct the disruption before it spread. He said nothing. That silence was louder than any command. Mina turned fully toward him now. You cannot allow this, she said quietly. Others are watching. She was right. They were. And that was the danger. Jae-min's eyes darkened, storm grey sharpening as he assessed the corridor. Not just the two women at its center, but the fragile balance surrounding them. Enough, he said finally. The word landed firm and final. Mina straightened, satisfied. Lyria did not move. This is not the place for ideological debate, Jae-min continued, his tone even. Lyria. She met his gaze, chin lifted. I will not bow, she said quietly. Not to her. The words echoed longer than they should have. Rakan bristled hard beneath Jae-min's skin. An instinctive surge that made his breath hitch for half a second before discipline clamped down. Mina noticed. Her eyes flicked between them. Something cold and sharp slid into her smile. Then she makes herself an enemy of the court, Mina said smoothly. Lyria didn't flinch. Then so be it. The corridor breathed again, shallow, uneasy. Jae-min held Lyria's gaze for a long moment. Then, instead of correcting her, he turned to Mina. This will be addressed later, he said. Publicly shaming her serves no one. Mina stared at him, shock flickering across her features before she masked it. As you wish, she said tightly. She stepped past Lyria without another word, attendants scrambling to follow. As she passed, Mina leaned just close enough for only Lyria to hear. You will kneel, she whispered. Or you will break. Lyria watched her go, pulse steady. I don't kneel, she murmured. And I don't break. Jae-min waited until the corridor began to disperse before turning back to her. You just made yourself very dangerous, he said quietly. Lyria met his gaze, unwavering. I've been dangerous, she replied. You just hadn't noticed. Something unreadable passed through his eyes. Nyx pressed closer beneath her skin. Good, her Lycan murmured. Now they see us. Rumors did not explode in Moonspire. They seeped. They slipped beneath doors and curled along corridors, passed from mouth to ear in softened voices and sharpened glances. By the time the sun shifted westward, the inner ceremonial corridor no longer held the scandal. The palace did. In the armory, warriors cleaned their blades more slowly than usual. Did you hear? She didn't bow. That's not what I heard. A blade scraped too hard against stone. They said she stared Mina down like she was nothing. That's suicide. One warrior snorted. Or courage. Another glanced sharply at him. Careful. Rank reasserted itself quickly there. No one spoke too loudly. No one lingered on admiration longer than was safe. But eyes kept drifting toward the door, as if half the armory expected Lyria to walk in at any moment. She didn't. In the West Wing laundry hall, Omegas worked in tight clusters, hands moving fast, voices low. She stood there, one whispered. Right in the corridor. And didn't bow, another asked, eyes wide. I saw it. I dropped the linens. A third Omega shook her head. She won't last the week. Or she'll be punished quietly, someone murmured. The first Omega hesitated. She didn't look scared. That unsettled them more than defiance ever could. In the kitchens, a senior attendant hissed at a younger one to stop staring at the doors. You want to lose your placement, she snapped. Mind your work. But the exile. She has a name, another cook said sharply. Silence followed. Names were dangerous things. In the council antechamber, elders gathered in pairs and trios, cloaks drawn close, expressions tight. This cannot be allowed to spread. It already has. She challenged protocol in public. She challenged Mina. One elder folded his hands. That is not the same thing. Another frowned. In this court. It is. A pause. And the Alpha Prince? That question lingered longer than the rest. He did not correct her. He delayed. He hesitated. No, an elder murmured. He watched. That was worse. By late afternoon, the narrative had split in two. To some, Lyria was reckless. An exile too ignorant to survive Moonspire's rules. To others, quieter and more careful, she was something else entirely. Unmovable. In the training courtyard, Rian listened without appearing to. Warriors circled the incident again and again, each retelling sharpening or dulling the edges depending on who spoke. Rian cleaned his weapon methodically, eyes lowered, posture calm. She didn't even flinch, someone said. That's because she doesn't understand consequences. Rian finally looked up. Or she understands them very well, he said evenly. The conversation died instantly. Rank asserted itself there too. Rian returned to his work, but his thoughts lingered, not on Mina's fury or the court's reaction, but on the stillness he'd seen in Lyria's stance. That kind of stillness didn't come from ignorance. It came from certainty. Elsewhere, Rowan walked the eastern halls with deliberate purpose, intercepting whispers before they grew teeth. She's dangerous, one warrior muttered as Rowan passed. Rowan stopped. Careful, he said calmly. Dangerous to who? The warrior swallowed. To order. Rowan's gaze hardened. Order survives challenge. Tyranny doesn't. He moved on before anyone could respond. By evening, the story reached the barracks, and changed again. Here, the details blurred, but the core remained. She stood. She refused. The Alpha Prince did not stop her. That last part mattered most. Among the lower ranks, fascination outweighed fear. She didn't kneel, a young Lycan whispered, eyes bright. Not even when Mina stared her down. Another scoffed. She's dead. Maybe, the first replied. But she looked alive when she did it. In the high residence wing, the tone was colder. Sharper. Calculated. This cannot continue, a noblewoman said, pacing. If others begin to think hierarchy is optional. It isn't, her companion replied. It's enforced. And enforcement is coming, the first said grimly. Across the palace, Lyria felt none of it directly. But she felt the absence. Doors closed a little faster. Conversations cut short when she passed. Eyes lingered, then darted away. No one confronted her. That was worse. Nyx remained alert beneath her skin, a steady presence that never fully relaxed. They are deciding what you are, her Lycan murmured. And? Lyria thought back. They don't like not knowing. By the time the moon rose, the scandal had settled into Moonspire's bones. It was no longer a question of whether Lyria had refused to bow. It was a question of what Moonspire would do about it. And somewhere behind closed doors, far from the reach of gossip, Mina reached the end of her restraint. But that would come next. Mina's POV. Mina's chambers were immaculate. Too immaculate. Nothing lay out of place. Not a single cushion disturbed, not a single ornament misaligned. Moonlight spilled through the tall windows, catching on polished stone and silver inlays, casting the room in cold, ordered beauty. Mina stood very still in the center of it. Her attendants had been dismissed the moment the doors closed. The silence pressed in. Her hands clenched slowly at her sides. She replayed the corridor again and again, the way the court had frozen, the way eyes had turned, the way the exile had stood there like she belonged more than Mina ever had. And worse, the way Jae-min had looked at Lyria. Not openly, not warmly, but deliberately. Mina's breath shuddered once before she mastered it. She embarrassed you, her Lycan hissed beneath her skin, sharp and venomous. She challenged what is yours. Yes, Mina whispered. She did. She moved suddenly, sweeping a crystal decanter from the table. It shattered against the far wall, glass exploding outward in a violent spray. The sound echoed. Mina didn't flinch. She does not understand her place, she said softly. But she will. Her Lycan coiled tighter, claws scraping inside her thoughts. You must remind them who you are. Mina straightened, smoothing her gown with precise, controlled movements. Her reflection stared back at her from a tall mirror. Perfect, composed, unshaken. No one would ever know how close she was to breaking. She crossed the room and reached for a small, sealed box hidden within a drawer beneath her vanity. Her fingers paused just before touching it. Not yet. But soon. Exiles don't survive Moonspire, she murmured. They disappear. And she smiled. Jae-min's POV. Jae-min's solar overlooked the eastern cliffs, the city lights of Moonspire scattered below like fallen stars. The doors shut behind him with a muted thud. Rowan was already there. You handled that badly, Rowan said without preamble. Jae-min didn't turn. He braced his hands against the stone railing, staring out into the dark. I contained it, he replied. You delayed it, Rowan corrected. There's a difference. Jae-min exhaled slowly. Rakan paced beneath his skin, restless, irritated, unsettled in a way Jae-min refused to unpack. She refused protocol in public, Rowan continued. You didn't correct her. That's being read as permission. I didn't give her permission to do anything. No, Rowan said. You gave her space. That struck closer than Jae-min liked. He straightened, turning to face his bait-tar. You think I should have forced her to bow? Rowan held his gaze. I think the court expected you to. And you? Rowan hesitated, just long enough to matter. No, he said finally. But that doesn't make this safer. A knock sounded at the door before Jae-min could respond. It opened without waiting for permission. Alpha Daesung entered the solar. The temperature dropped instantly. Rowan bowed once and stepped back, folding his arms but staying present. Daesung's gaze cut straight to his son. You undermined Mina, the Alpha said calmly. I prevented a spectacle. You created one, Daesung replied. He moved closer, stopping just short of the railing. The court is watching you, Daesung said. They are watching her. And now, they are watching whether I will allow an unranked exile to challenge the authority of my chosen successor. Jae-min's jaw tightened. She challenged Mina, Daesung continued. Not the crown. You made them indistinguishable. That wasn't my intention. Daesung studied him, slow and piercing. No, he said. Your intention is the problem. Rakan surged sharply, agitation bleeding into Jae-min's chest. He forced it down. She will be disciplined, Daesung said. Quietly, if possible. Publicly, if necessary. Rowan stiffened. Alpha. Daesung cut him off with a glance. Jae-min stepped forward. You will not touch her, he said again. Daesung smiled thinly. You keep saying that, he replied. As if you have already claimed the right to protect her. Silence snapped tight between them. Jae-min's breath steadied by sheer force of will. I protect Moonspire, he said. From internal fractures as much as external threats. Then you should remove the fracture, Daesung said coolly. He turned toward the door. You have one night, the Alpha added. Reassert order. Reinforce Mina's claim. Or I will. The doors closed behind him. Rowan let out a slow breath. That was a threat. Jae-min stared at the door long after his father left. Yes, he said quietly. It was. And? Rowan asked. Jae-min didn't answer immediately. His thoughts kept circling the same image. Lyria standing alone in the corridor, unbowed, unbroken, unafraid. She doesn't know how dangerous this is, Rowan said. Yes, Jae-min replied. He turned back toward the window, fists clenched. And neither do they. Rakan stilled beneath his skin. Not calm, but focused. Ready.